there, it's Christy. Welcome to the Chirp YouTube channel. I am your friendly online speech-language pathologist and specialist in children's communication development, which also includes behavior. We are on a mission in this series to prevent challenging behavior from ever needing to occur because we provide such a wonderful and supportive environment for our children. We are using the pyramid model. I will put for you a little pyramid right here to give you a good example of this model. And we are talking first about supportive environments because this is pretty much the very first thing we kind of need to get in place before we embark on more individualized strategies for children. The reason I like this model is because it does build. First we do the simpler things, and then at the top, for the children who might not respond to the simpler things, we target strategies. But these strategies in our initial videos are the basics so that all students will benefit. I realized that in the last video in this series, I forgot to mention that one of the reasons I want to talk about this is because I get a lot of questions about how to include children with developmental differences into typical programming. And it is really challenging because we have lots of specific strategies that we use for our kids that typical classrooms don't use. And I think that this is a mistake, because the strategies that I use in my classrooms benefit my kids who learn in different ways, but they also benefit typically developing students, which I think is something that most teachers don't realize. If I have class rules and I make them visual, that's going to help my kids who don't read yet, or who need input through their vision rather than through their ears, but it's also going to help the rest of the students because it brings it to mind more often, because it's going in through yet another modality, not just through teacher talking about the rules, but, oh yeah, I remember because I see it on the wall every time when I come in. And we repeat them regularly, so I hear them auditorily, I see them visually. It helps our typical students too, because they see it and they hear it. That's good for everyone. I am going to give you some hints today for making your classroom a more supportive environment for all children, and it may enable some of our children with developmental differences to be more at home and to not have some of those challenging behaviors that we might otherwise see. The first thing we want to talk about is a visual schedule and visual timers. This is kind of two things. I have my visual schedule here, but what I normally do is put it on the wall. And I normally put it, these are not in order, I normally put it from left to right, because reading a visual schedule is kind of like reading in general, meaning that we want to do it for English speakers left to right, because we're reading. So first of all, my students are going to come in and we're going to say hello. And then we're going to play. So I'm going to put these, I have sticky putty on the back because these were on the wall. Hello, play. Then when playtime is done, clean up. When cleanup is done, we have our story time. And so I have all of these printed out from Boardmaker, as you can probably tell. I printed them out in color, I printed them out on cardstock, and then I glued them on to a specific color of, what is it called? Construction paper. And then I laminated them and cut them out. These have lasted me years and years and years and years and years. And they're still in really good shape. The construction paper has faded. It used to be a bright blue, and now it's kind of a dusty blue. Actually, you can see the back has not faded. The front has. Oh, the sun in Arizona. This is a visual schedule. If you wish, what we did in our preschool classrooms when I worked in the public schools is we would put Velcro on the back and we would take down the picture when that thing was finished. So instead of hello, we might have arrive at school. And then when all the kids come in and hang their backpack up, we would take down arrive at school and we put it in a little basket and then play. Then when playtime was done, which we would indicate with a visual timer, if playtime is 7 minutes long, we would set the timer for 7 minutes. The kids can hear it ticking, so they know that the end is coming, and they can see that it's getting smaller. It is going to ring here, so plug your ears if you're sensitive. It was a very short ring. That is a visual pie timer. This is not specialized for children with disabilities. This is actually a timer for the kitchen, but it just happens to be very sturdy. And some of the timers that I've gotten that were specialized for education were not very sturdy. Kids like to play with timers, and they like to take the timer and make the time go faster or put more time on the timer. And so it's good if they are sturdy. This one is. I'll put links to some other sturdy ones in the box below this video. Visual schedule, visual timers. They kind of work together because we want to indicate that a specific time has passed by the use of the timer. It's much easier to tell kids that the timer's gonna ring, uh-oh, listen to the timer, than it is to say, okay, all done, because kids get angry at the timer instead of getting angry at you. Isn't that clever? I want to mention here, of course, that if you have a visual schedule in your classroom, which you should, even if you have no kids with different learning styles, because it's helpful for everyone, it's a good idea to change it if your schedule changes. So for example, if you usually have a time when you go to the playground, but that particular day there's a blizzard and you're not allowed outside, or it's pouring rain and you can't go outside because the kids would all die of rain drowning, whatever the case is. I don't know what the rules are where you live. In some places kids go outside anyway if it's raining, in some cases they don't. But whatever, your schedule has changed, you're not going to the playground today. You want to make sure that you change the schedule. So you take off the playground picture and you put on gym. If you have a gym, or you put on free play in classroom. Or maybe you do something fun like take a tour through the school, whatever it is. Have a visual for that and swap it in. Make sure that the kids can trust the schedule, or it's not really useful to have one. My second tip or area in which you should think about using visuals is requesting. Obviously, please use requesting books. Again, I have used Boardmaker and I have links to it in the box below. I have on one page activities that the kids can pick at free playtime. On the other page, I have snacks that the kids can pick at snack time. It's very helpful for many reasons, and I have a whole series about using communication books that you can find right up there, so don't hesitate to do that. We also should keep in mind that there are things kids need to communicate besides I want. One of those is hurts. Sometimes things hurt. We need to make sure that kids can express that if at all possible. Of course, we need to teach them how to express that. And I have a video where I talk about that right up there, so you can check that one out. But this is a good book to keep. This is a good strategy to use when you're playing, because you can teach how to say things hurt, but also just in general, you can talk. If you bump your knee into the desk, you can grab your book, you can find knee, and you could say, ouch, knee hurts. Of course I put it sideways. Ouch, ugh, knee hurts. And then you can show the bruise later when it develops. Knee hurts. So we're teaching kids very practically, in very obvious ways, how to express when something hurts. Very helpful. We also want to give kids as many choices as possible. I have a couple examples here. One example is maybe you have a free play time and you notice that your student who has different needs is getting a little worked up and might need some sensory supports. Check out my whole series on the 9 different sensory modalities right up there. This is a sensory board that is a little more appropriate for a classroom because it does have a swing. So if you don't have a swing in your classroom, you don't have that one on there. But all the rest of this stuff is pretty applicable to a classroom. And there's room on the back on my board for adding some things if we're outside. But basically, you allow the child to choose which thing she thinks might help her to feel calm. We have squeezing something, pulling something, lifting something, gnawing on something, squeezing something, having some time alone, getting a hug. It's very helpful to let kids choose what they think will help. I also have, this kind of goes in more than one category, but it's kind of a choice. First and then, so I had a little student who was having a lot of difficulty staying calm. She was having tons of meltdowns, just tons of them. Whenever anything didn't go exactly how she wanted, she kind of would start screaming and kicking and fighting and yelling. So first we have quiet mouth, quiet arms, and quiet legs. Then she got to pick what she wanted to do. I only have 2 things left on here because these were her 2 favorite, but I think I also had fruit snacks and a couple other of these sensory things. So she would get to choose what she wanted when she got calm. Sometimes she did pick something in the middle of her meltdown, but a lot of times we had to pick, it was part of her reinforcement to remember. I would sit there with her while she was in her meltdown, not too close, and say, first, quiet mouth, quiet arms, quiet legs, then something fun. And that would kind of help her spin out of her meltdown. And of course, we will talk much more about meltdowns when we get to the end of this series, where we're talking about more specified strategies for kids who need a little bit more than these basic adjustments in the classroom. We want to give kids a chance to ask for a break. I have finished is a visual that I use a lot. There is one that is called break, and it has a kid breaking a stick or something like that. So having one of those on the child's desk and allowing him to just hand it to you and then take a break immediately, that can help eliminate a lot of challenging behaviors. And we're not worried as much at this point about finishing a task or making sure the child gets through this particular assignment. We're concerned about the challenging behaviors. So if a child says finished, let her be finished and come back to it when she's calm again. It is more important that the child learns to self-regulate than it is that the child learns math at this point. Math skills without self-regulation are not useful. Self-regulation is useful on its own, and that is what we have to focus on before we focus on academics. Don't forget to talk about feelings. There are tons of books about feelings, of course, and there are some links in the comments, the notes box, the info box, about some activities that you can do in the classroom about feelings. And the reason this is important is because social emotional skills are the basis for being able to stay calm and regulated. I need to be able to recognize my own emotions and someone else's emotions, and then I can take appropriate strategies to regulate myself. So it's really important that we can recognize those emotions so we can deal with them properly. We also want to let kids have a choice when it comes to songs. So if you have a circle time, if you have time, a music and movement time, then let kids pick and let kids take turns choosing which songs that they would like to sing. My next category, where you should definitely think about having visuals, is the area of classroom rules. I have a classroom rules page, also laminated, because you could do anything to this thing and you really can't hurt it. My classroom rules are quiet hands. Oh, these are for story time. My classroom rules are keep myself safe, keep other people safe, keep our stuff safe. That's all. If I'm hitting myself, that's not keeping myself safe. If I'm hitting the camera, that's not keeping our stuff safe. So pretty much everything that we can fit in there, and this is not only physically safe, but we need to keep each other's feelings safe. So I can't swear word at you, and you can't say swear words at me. These are for story time. Quiet hands, quiet feet, quiet mouth, sit in chair. Of course, if you are sitting in chairs, you might be sitting in a circle on the floor, in which case your picture probably needs to be different. Keep in mind that our brains do not process the word not very easily, especially at a young age, especially when we might have any sort of processing disorder. So we want to make sure we phrase all these in the positive. Tell kids what you want them to do rather than what you want them not to do. So we don't say no hitting, no kicking, no yelling, no getting up and running around. We phrase it all in the positive. We tell kids what we want them to do. That's very important. Whatever they hear the most is what their brain is going to remember. So if they hear no hitting and they don't understand the no yet at the base brain level, then all they're going to hear is hitting, kicking, yelling, getting up and running around. And that's going to defeat the purpose of the rules. So don't do it. Tell kids what you do want them to do. This is a good place where you can put safety signs around your classroom. Put a big stop sign on the door. Put a sign that says, wait for teacher, right next to the stop sign. That will be helpful for those kids who just want to take off and who forget that they need to wait for a grown-up. It's a good idea at this point with rules to also think about directions. Sometimes the kids will have something in the classroom that they need to do. Maybe wash their hands, and we can give them directions in this area. 1, turn on water. 2, wet hands. 3, soap on hands. 4, rub hands. Count to 30. 5, rinse hands. 6, turn off water. 6, get paper towel. 7, turn off water. 8, dry hands. This is a great routine to have so that kids learn the routine. They learn the hand washing script, and therefore it will be in their brains forever, and they will be doing it just the way that you want because you will have visuals that speak to them in their language. Fourth category, in which you should definitely include visuals, is where to be. Where do you want the students to be? It's a great idea to have footprints on the floor. Any place where you want children to stand in a line. Put little footprints so each child can stand on a pair of footprints. If you have a circle time or a story time where children sit on the ground, put X's in masking tape or duct tape on duct tape. Duct tape is going to stick better, but it's really hard to get up. Masking tape is not going to stick, but it's easy to get up. You get to take your pick. Neither is perfect, but put some kind of an X on the floor. Carpets, I had in my classroom, this last classroom anyway, I had carpets. I got a bunch of little circle carpets, and you can put those little carpets on the floor. No tape involved, and each child chooses a carpet color and then sits on that, and that is their contained area. Sometimes children just don't know where their body is supposed to be, and so they're all over the place, or they get up and run away, or wiggle, or touch their peers. But carpets are a good way to say, this is my space. This is where I'm supposed to be. And it can be really helpful for some of those kids. Put a box on the floor or an additional carpet around where children are supposed to be during certain times. So if they have a desk, maybe it's a classroom, put tape around a little area that contains the desk and the chair. If it's desk time, this is my area. It feels safe to know our boundaries. If there's a free play area, usually that will be boxed in by a kitchen, a dollhouse, maybe the wall of the classroom, but then it's open on the edge. So put a piece of tape across that. This is the free play area, or maybe this is just the house area, and there's a different area for blocks and Legos and cars. So delineate the areas as best you can and put a picture on it that says free play, because that's going to help our kids who need to know what their boundaries are. You also want to make sure that you do have clear zones for particular activities. If you have a really small classroom, sometimes this isn't possible, but there will be a zone for free play. There will be a zone where you do circle time. There will be a zone that is the sensory zone. These things are really helpful to kids because then they know what they're supposed to do, what the expectations are when they are in that specific area. My fifth area where you should definitely be considering visuals is prompts. This kind of has been covered in other ways, but I wanted to cover it again because our kids really need to remember how to do things and what to do in certain places, and they need visuals to do it. One example might be when kids come in, you hold this and you say, hello, and then you point to the picture and the child says hello, or maybe not, maybe there's a wave, maybe there's not, but this is how we teach social niceties. We use visual prompts. We can do the same thing with thank you. So if you are working on this skill with a child, it's snack time, the child requests some crackers, you give her the crackers, and then you point to this, thank you, and you model what you want the child to say. Thank you. It's very nice. We're giving some lessons in social interactions while we're doing everyday things. That is the best way to learn. We also want to help the students as they're interacting with each other. So in the free play area, we might have a visual that says, want to play? And the kids can point to it and say, want to play, to one of their peers. What a great idea. In the preschool classrooms that I have worked in, the way that we worked our way through the schedule was, as the schedule went on, we would tell our kids to check the schedule. They'd get a picture. They had their own private schedules, each one of them, that were filled at the end of the day, and at the end of the day, they had been emptied out because all the things were finished. So they'd have their own schedule. We tell them to check their schedule. They take the next thing on the schedule, which in this case I'm pretending is play, and then they would know they're supposed to go to the play area. That is the next thing on their schedule. So they go to the play area. You can also just have these little cards and you hand them to the children when it's time to go to the play area, or when it's time to go to the story area. Or you can just hold it up and say, story time. There are all sorts of different ways that you can use these visuals to help your students navigate through their time with you. You probably could use labels on some of your most common items and systems. If you have backpacks and children come with backpacks and coats, you want to have the pictures of the students above their individual hooks so they know exactly where to put their backpack. What a great idea. You want to have a place for their boots or their rain gear or that kind of thing. Put their picture, write their name on it. It's so cute. Also, you want your equipment to be very organized. It's a great idea to have a container for every activity so that the children know when they're done playing rocket balloons, all the rocket balloons go back in the rocket balloon box, which is labeled with a picture of rocket balloons. And then the rocket balloon box goes in the cupboard where there's a picture of the rocket balloons that matches. It does take a little bit of work to organize this way, but it always takes work to organize a classroom. And so this isn't much more than normal. It also requires quite a few bins. But I have a hint for you. I have become an avid thrifter. I love going to Goodwill and finding deals, and I'm amazed by how many big bins they have. All sorts of bins that I'm going to use in my classroom and that I already use in my storage cabinets over there. It's also a good idea to prompt using countdowns. I already mentioned the visual timer, and these are very inexpensive, so there's no reason every single family and classroom shouldn't have one. You can also use a countdown like this. You can say, oh, the timer rang. That means time to count down to go to story time. And then everyone in the class counts down together. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off. And then all the kids traipse over to the story table and enjoy their time learning with their teacher. My last category of areas where you should have visuals in your classroom or your home, I didn't mention that, but these are good for home too, is to provide options. We kind of talked about that with the requesting book, but I want to talk about a few additional areas where kids have options and we don't normally think about it. Number one is in activities, so art activities or play activities. Let me tell you a story about my student Marcus, who was a very well-behaved student in the classroom. He had a diagnosis of an autism spectrum disorder and was in a specialized program, but he was far and away the calmest student we had in the classroom. But when we went out to recess, he was a wild man. He was running all over, trying to escape. It seemed like he was confused, like he didn't know what to do with himself. And indeed, that is exactly what was the case. I went to a continuing education seminar, and one of the things they said is sometimes challenging behavior is because kids don't know what they're supposed to be doing at any particular time, which is why transitions are usually the most difficult time. So I decided, well, let's make him a choice board for recess, for the playground, basically. So I made him a board like this. This is the sensory one. But on the back I put slide, swing, play chase, play in the sand, stack rocks. I don't even remember what they all were. But there was a board, and then we took a timer. He would pick a thing, and I would set the timer for 2 minutes. When the 2 minutes was up, he would come over and pick another thing. He did not have any more trouble, because he knew what his options were. I think kids sometimes feel like they need to do everything at once because they're going to miss out if they don't. I can relate. Sometimes I don't want to go to bed because there's still so much fun to be had, just like a little 2-year-old. And we can help them to structure that time so that they don't feel panicked that they're missing out on something. Also, we can do this with toys. Some toys, open-ended toys, I have a series on play, and I'll be doing another one coming up because that series is pretty old, and so most of you probably haven't seen it. But one of the ways that we differentiate between types of play are closed-ended play and open-ended play. Closed-ended play is something like rocket balloons. All you can do is pump them up and send them off. You can talk about how they're rockets, you can talk about how they're whales, but really you pump it up and you send it off. Open-ended play is blocks, cars, play houses, play food, all of these types of things where how it plays out is open. There's no dictated path for how you have to play with a little person or a little car or a set of blocks. It's open. Open-ended play is specifically very difficult for many of our kids with autism spectrum disorders. Play is different for many of our students on the autism spectrum. It doesn't necessarily carry the same purpose as play for our typically developing kids, and it doesn't have the same kind of flexibility in a lot of cases, which is something we want to encourage if at all possible. I'm not saying that other types of play are not valuable, but flexible play is very valuable for the brain, for the social skills of a child. So we want to encourage that wherever possible. And one of the ways we do that, I'm going to give you an example with blocks. We have blocks. A child with autism might not know what to do with blocks. Maybe a child with autism lines all the blocks up, but that's all that he does with them. we want to encourage some additional ways that a child could play with blocks, because blocks are a flexible toy. They are an open-ended toy, and we want to demonstrate how fun they can be in additional ways. So we take pictures. We can have a little flip book. I have one in my cabinet. Let me show you. This is a little flip book with pockets in it. I think it's meant for photos, but I use it for visuals in the classroom. You can put a little mini schedule in here. You can put options for the playground or sensory options, or you can put in here, this could be options for playing with blocks. So you can have different pictures in here of things that you could do with the blocks. Perhaps one of them is build a tower. Perhaps one of them is build a person. You could even have a little page like these with steps to build a person. So picture one would have put a block as the head, and picture two, that would be labeled 2, would have put 4 blocks in a row to make the body, and then put on the arms and the legs. Ta-da, you have a person. So you can make instructions for how kids can play in these different areas. You can put it in a little book, you can put it on a sheet and laminate it and keep it in the blocks bin. There are all sorts of different ways. You can make a little flip book, just your own little flip book that only has those pictures in it. These are some things I thought of to do with the blocks. Stack them up into a tower, line them up, build a house, build letters with the blocks, or make people with the blocks. And of course, there are many, many more ways that we can play with blocks. These are just some examples. Of course, you have to be creative as the adult in the scenario. You can't just leave it up to the children. But as you watch children playing, see where they're being very rigid or repetitive, and try to encourage more of that flexibility by using visuals. These are by no means all of the ways that you can use visuals in your classroom. I highly recommend checking out, all of my equipment's piled everywhere, this book called Visual Strategies for Improving Communication, which has all sorts of ways to improve your classroom, to improve the ways that you do things, with lots and lots and lots of pictures. The same author also wrote a book called Solving Behavior Problems in Autism, and that one is equally good with all sorts of very helpful strategies too. I hope this video gave you lots to think about. Please leave me questions down below. Anything you'd like me to break down in more detail, I would be happy to do so in an upcoming video, because I think all of these strategies are fabulous and so helpful, not only for us, not only for our children with developmental differences, but also for every child. We all need a little more structure. We all need a little more help to brainstorm, and we all need more communication that comes in through our eyes. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks for being here.